Mohamed, is there a chance that we can have a no landing scenario?
Sure, there's a chance that we can have a world in which there are positive things happening on the supply side, and we can be, quote, bigger but not hotter. Yes, that is part of the distribution of potential outcome. I think a soft landing is still the 55% probability. Bigger but not hotter is 15%. So add them two up, you get 70, and then you have a 30% probability that either because of or because of weakness in low-income households, or because of a Fed policy mistake, we end up in a recession.
It seems like everyone expects this Fed to still cut at least 25 basis points. Do you think that they have moved to a framework that is less data dependent if the data actually suggests that the labor market is doing just fine?
Yes, I think they're moving that way. It started with Chairman Powell's Jackson Hole speech. It continued in his press conference. And I think they are moving away from being overly data dependent to also trying to have a forward-looking view of where the economy is going to settle.
Mohamed, does next week's CPI report matter to you at all now?
It matters to me, Anne-Marie, and the one that's going to matter even more is the one after that. Yes, it does matter to me. I think Jeff is absolutely right. This notion that the last mile was going to be easy, this notion that inflation is dead, this notion that we are mission accomplished, came way too early. And I think we're going to see from core inflation why certain parts remain sticky. Meanwhile, headline inflation is going to start moving up after not this month, but the next month. So yes, these CPI prints still matter. And of course, they matter a great deal to the American people.
Mohamed, talk to me about what kind of numbers you think we have to get accustomed with. Are we talking about stabilizing at these levels for inflation, or are we talking about the real risk of reacceleration, given what's happening in the commodity market, what we've seen out of China, and the easing that's come from the Federal Reserve, that after a jobs report like this, some people are thinking has come prematurely? How real is that reacceleration risk for inflation?
So to the extent we have an equilibrium rate of inflation, for today's economy, it would be 2.5% to 3%. If the Fed had the option, which it does not, if the Fed had the option to set a new inflation target, that is where it would make sense. We will settle, I suspect, somewhere towards the upper end of that because, as Jeff said, financial conditions are extremely loose. There are two factories of credit, two factories of liquidity. You heard it in your interview with Mark Rowan. There is not just the official factory, which has produced a ton of this, but there's the private factory that's getting more and more efficient and producing more and more credit and leverage and looser conditions. And we are living in a world where these two factories are still operating at quite a high level. So there is a risk, John, that we will settle towards the higher end of that 2.5% to 3%.